Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
So my name is A.R. Farina. I am from Michigan originally. I am a college professor and I teach online, and I live in Florida now. And this book, Welcome to Mansfield, is the first book in my new series called the Austin Chronicles, which is a modern day retelling of the Jane Austen 6 novels, but in a shared universe. So all of the characters will kind of butt into each other and get in each other's lives. And I'm a big Janeite, so I'm excited to talk a little bit about her today. I'm going to read from the first chapter, which is just kind of a tone setter for the college where all of the books will eventually take place, even if it's just for a page or two in that book. All roads lead to Mansfield. Chapter 1 is called A Bit of History. Mansfield College is named for the small town where it resides in the middle of a Midwestern state. The term Midwestern here is a bit misleading. The state is, for the most part, in the Eastern time zone, but the term is stuck because of the large swath of the United States, even though that no longer makes sense. The Plains are technically the Midwest. Still, for purposes of this story, Mansfield is in the wrongly named but culturally accepted Midwest. The town began as most towns did during that time. It was a stop along a railway during the Industrial Revolution that exploded with textiles and manufacturing. Both village and college were founded in 1814 by the abolitionist who lent his name to both. Mansfield, a wealthy physician whose family fortune came from quite nefarious means, wanted to create a new place that agreed better with his personal values. At the northernmost point of the town, situated the park, his familial home, in which much of this tale will take place. The park is 4 square acres, although it's not actually square. The front property edge is straight and the back is rounded from the air. It kind of looks like a D. It's surrounded by a 6-foot-tall black fence, and the main gate faces due south. There's a public walking path in the entire around the property, and it's called the park. Going down from the park is Main Street, and the road crossing the park is Mansfield Parkway. To the west lies Mansfield College.
To the east lies Southernton, the Rushworth Estate.
More on those to come in due course. The road that encompasses the property is called Mansfield Circle. No one ever accused Dr. Mansfield of modesty.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Inside the Minds of Authors. I am thrilled you guys are joining us today. It's going to be another amazing episode. If you're new to the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode. We're here on Monday nights with new authors, new books, and a lot of exciting things. If you're interested in supporting the podcast and bringing more authors to your listening station, you can join our podcast junkie at Patreon. So make sure to click the links. And because you're here to listen to another amazing author, hope you love that reading, because we're going to be talking to the fabulous AR. Hello, darling.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Look at us. We both have first names that we choose to not share. AR and DC. Yeah.
Technically, mine is my middle name, so it's all good. I say it's more confusing.
Yeah. It's totally fair. I like it. It's one of those things you grow up. Some of my favorite writers just go by initials. It's just always something I was always in my head. If I ever got a book published, I would use my initials as a love letter to those that I loved.
Oh, I love that. I happen to be Dominican, so I come with a whole bunch of names.
Oh,
so
nice.
It was fun to pick and choose, and DC is just kind of fun.
It is.
It better if I was like Marvel, but hey, DC, come on now.
I'm a DC guy. I mean, I like Marvel too, but I've got my Batman mug, so there's nothing wrong with DC.
Thank you. It's so much fun. It's so exciting. We need to start discussing this. I got a little bit about you before we started recording, but English teacher?
Yeah.
You're retelling of Jane Austen, which just made me giggle in my soul. I was like, what is going on here? I need to know what made you decide to write the story and where did it come from?
Sure. Well, I'm a big Janeite, so I've been a reader just my whole life. I started reading like when I was 3. I always kind of read above my grade level. So it was just like books were around. My mom was like, here's a book, it'll keep you quiet. And so that was kind of my gateway drug into that. When I was younger, everybody kind of reads the big 3 Austen, which are Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and Emma. And there's this like sense that the other 3 books aren't as good. I disagree. But I didn't know that until I got older. And then I read them all. I think she's actually really hysterical. I think people get the wrong impression of Austen books. A lot of that has to do with the movies and the TV shows. And, is this a kissing book? Sure, it is, but it's really a social satire. I was deciding what to do next. I'd finished a book for my MFA, which was much more written for adults, has all the swearing and all the things that books for adults do. It's about a dysfunctional family. I was like, I wanted to do something a little bit lighter. And Mansfield Park, I'd actually written a paper on character during my MFA about Mansfield Park. And I picked that book because I felt the character of the book was misunderstood and I wanted to do a deep dive into her character. As I was thinking about what to do next and thinking about like modern day adaptations and things of that nature, books I like, Marissa Meyer does the Lunar Chronicles, which are retelling of the big fairy tales, and she does a bang up job. Those are so good. She's amazing. And
so good. So like you said it, I was like, oh my God.
Aren't those amazing? She's so great. I mean, the Lunar Chronicles are exceptional.
Unfortunately, I have friends who are not into it because they don't get the cyborg reference. But I'm like, this is such a good binge for anybody who's listening and watching. You got to pick them up because they're so good. So yes.
They're great. And the covers too. They keep redoing the covers. But the original cover, and this is what drew my wife and I, and my wife's a librarian. We saw the cover. It just said Cinder. So you knew what it was. And you see the foot, it's like of the shoe. But then you see an x-ray and you see the cyborg bone inside, or like whatever that is. We're on that. And then to discover, she put all of them in a connected universe. So it's not just like retelling of Red Riding Hood and retelling of Snow White. They're in a connected universe. So it's like, this has been something that had been done. I was thinking about it. So at first I wasn't planning on writing a series. I was like, well, I think Mansfield Park is misunderstood. What if I could take it and set it in a modern place? I work at a college. I loved being in college. I'm a nerd. I was like, what if I do that? What if I kind of take the good parts, kind of do a Princess Bride version of Mansfield Park, right? I'm going to just tell the good parts. And I think it's all good, but I think people get bogged down in Austen's language of the time when it was written in the late 1700s, early 1800s, but also if you're not familiar with the society that she's satirizing, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. There's like a lot of extra history there. So I think this is a misunderstood character. So I wrote it just for me. And while I was doing it, I started connecting the book. So I started adding other characters, minor characters from the other books, and I shared the universe. So because Fanny Price, who's the main character in Jane Austen's Mansfield Park, is kind of a minor character in her own story. And I didn't name her Fanny, I named her Junior. Fanny is short for Francis Jr. And in modern parlance, whether you're in the UK or in America, Fanny means something different in both countries, but it doesn't mean Junior of Francis. So I was like, I'm not writing a whole young adult book where the main character is called Fanny. We're not doing that. I named her Junior Price because Mansfield, she's 5 when you meet her and she's an adult when it ends. So I just started kind of in a different bridge of adulthood where she's getting ready to go off to college. And so it's coming of age story there. So it was just fun for me. And then through a friend of a friend that now has become my friend, Tanya Todd, she was like, oh, you should check out this place, this publisher. And so I was like, well, they only do a series. And so one day I was talking to my wife about it, who's a big Janeite with me. We're big nerds. We have a full collection of Jane Austen's novels in every room in our house.
I am impressed.
We're crazy people. I was like, well, I've already built the universe. I could do it. So like in this book, Margaret Dashwood appears. She's called Maggie. And I was like, so I could retell Sense and Sensibility, but from her perspective. So it's the same thing. She's like, oh, so I started doing it and I pitched it to which is now my publisher, Four Horsemen. And Bo Lake, who was the person who got her hands on it first, was like, oh, I dig it. I get what you're doing. And sent it out to the right people there. And that was that. So then I was like, oh, now I have to write a whole series. So at first it was just for me to try to say, could I get someone to read Mansfield Park and then maybe read mine? Read Welcome to Mansfield, and then go read the original. And so far, several people have done that. I've heard from several people that they have actually gone on to read Mansfield Park because they've read this. So it was like mission accomplished. That was pretty cool.
I love your reading. I know you're a little bit like, is it going to be? The sarcasm came through, believe it or not. I know you told me sarcasm wasn't coming for. I was like, I don't know. That's pretty sarcastic right there.
Okay, good.
So you did an amazing job with it. I love the commentary of like, he might have not been very modest. It was perfect. Everything about it. I love the fact that you tackle something that most of us know, But I'm like with you. I'm probably that person. I'm like, is Jane really for me? Is she really funny? Because I love humor. Is this going to be a romance? But I'm also probably the person that was very brainwashed by all the movies, the 3 books that everybody knows, and missed the whole essence. So I'm loving this.
Oh, good.
So
That makes me happy.
You did a great job. You have converted a person to make me look at it like,
Hooray.
oh, wait.
Hooray.
Yeah.
And the other big thing too is that you'll notice on the cover, for those who are watching on the Patreon, it's always going to be a silhouette. I go out of my way to kind of deconstruct it. And so the heroes, the heroines of my books, you're never going to know their race. That's it. Because there's this myth of the straight white girl. And sure, in the movies, unless it's like there's an amazing Bollywood version of Pride and Prejudice called Bride and Prejudice, which was spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously in Clueless, the main character, that's based on Emma, the main characters. There's people of color in Clueless, but for the most part, there's this straight white girl idea of all of the Austen novels. And I'm trying to get away from that. And so I've heard from different people, because I deliberately don't describe the race of any of the heroines. And I have heard from different people that they think, oh, Junior's totally this. Like they have implanted. So that is perfect for me. I made sure when I worked with my artist that we were not using any actual imagery of real people, so that anyone could go, oh, I could be the lead of my Jane Austen book. So I'm hoping that also helps bring in new readers and demystifies a little bit, because again, it's, oh, well, Gwyneth Paltrow is Emma, or so-and-so is Emma. This is what they look like. Keira Knightley is Lizzie Bennet, and this person is that. And I'm like, okay, sure. Because you're trying to be historically accurate to the time, and Jane Austen was a white lady. So you're like, but I disagree. I feel like I'm hoping Jane is proud of me by saying, I want to tell stories for all people. She's really more talking about class and money than she is about race at all. And so I just eliminated that. Some of the characters have a race specifically because I'm describing the person, but the heroines never are going to be. And I just thought that would be a fun way to try to get people to see themselves in Austen's books.
It's such a unique way of making a social commentary without making it, because I think that is perfect. Because sometimes we want to be inclusive and just tend to separate people. We make it so specific. We make it so like, this is what this person has to be in order to be inclusive, instead of just letting it be, here's who this person is. Figure it out. You can fill in the space.
That's the goal. That's the hope, is that you decide, oh, I think this, and that's fine. And so it's just fun. Even my wife and I, who's my first and last reader, she and I have different views on what they look like. And I think that's spectacular. I give them personalities and then let you fill in the blanks. And that's my kind of writing process and sometimes you need to say, this person is really big. Like in the second book, there's a person who's so big every time he walks into the room, he kind of changes the air so everybody turns and looks at him. So like I describe that, that's fine. But you can then decide other things about the characters. Because I think Jane is doing a social commentary. And I think that is missing a lot in the way that she's been adapted. So I thought I would lean into it a little bit more. It's the English teacher in me too, right? We're always looking for the secret thing that our students are like, is that really there? Maybe.
I was going to point that out to you, and I'm glad you did it yourself, because I was like, sounds like an English teacher coming out of you. So good. And that's really what we want. We want people to go back to stories and delve into them and get lost and then be able to come to their own conclusions. I'm loving the take you're going with this. So this is book 1. How many books are in the series, and where are you in the writing?
Sure. There's going to be 6 for sure. So Jane Austen made 6 complete novels in adulthood. So that's my plan now. She had 2 juvenilia novels. One was called The Watsons and one is called Love and Friendship. And so in theory, I could do those, and I haven't decided if I will or not. And then she also had an incomplete novel called Sanditon. That isn't great, I'll be honest. The person they hired to finish it, but the BBC and PBS just recently did a TV version of it where they adapted it themselves, which I think is delightful. So if I do get to that eventually, I want to be far enough away from that so people are like, is he just ripping off this thing? 6 for sure, with the potential for more. My publisher's open to whatever. They are really cool in that they sign me to a number of years as opposed to a number of books. So they're giving me like, hey, when you get to the end, you want to keep going, we'll just add a year to your contract, add a year to your contract. The second book is at the publisher right now, and I am about 22,000 words into book 3.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So the second book is a prequel to this book because we're meeting one of the characters that we meet in Welcome to Mansfield. And it's her journey to Mansfield. So it's 5 years before. And then the third book is also the president of the university that you meet in Welcome to Mansfield. It's her journey as a teenager of how she got to Mansfield, because she's a Mansfield graduate who then goes on to be the president. And it's Mary Bennett. That one is a middle sister in Pride and Prejudice. It's her version of Pride and Prejudice that I'm working on now.
Ooh. What do you do to actually do a retelling using source material, but make it your own? What is a retelling for anybody who's not familiar? How do you do that?
Sure, that's a good one. For me, the most important thing is you can change some of the names. Like I said, I still say that her name is Frances Price Jr., but we're not going to call her Fanny. One of the characters in Welcome to Mansfield, there's a lot of characters whose names start with M. There's a Mary, there's a Mariah, there's a Maria, there's this. So I was like, one of the names I just changed, because back then, everybody named their kids after themselves. So you've got Williams and Bills, and you've got Toms and Tommies and this. And so I leaned into the names. Like I tried to make sure you knew who was who. But what I try to do is, what is the essence of their personality from my interpretation? We all can read a different book and think different things. We talked about comic books. Some people could read I'm a big comic book nerd. Some people could read it that Bruce Wayne is a hero. Some people could read that maybe he's a crazy rich person who puts on a costume and beats up poor people at night. That's also true. Both things are true. So you could not love Batman because you're like, he's a little problematic, which he is. But you could also be like, no, he fights for justice and he's this. So your interpretation of it, and there are different actors and different directors when they portray Batman throughout time. Adam West's version and Christian Bale's are completely different. It's that kind of idea that I went into it, is who are the characters that exist? What do I want to do? And so for me, it's like boiling down the essence of the personality as I see it and making sure that comes through, and then just setting it into a time and place that's much more recognizable. So what are the things that are important? So for Junior, the original Fanny Price is a really good kid. She doesn't lie. She doesn't like to be involved in pranks or schemes or anything. She just wants to tell the truth. But she also isn't a tattletale. So she doesn't just go up to her uncle and be like, my cousins are acting crazy. She just is quiet. But if they say, Fanny, did Tommy do this? She'd say, yes. She's not going to cover for anybody either. She's that. So I made sure that's that. And then how do I move that to modern day where she doesn't seem like a stick in the mud, which is what people think of her. So you just build the character around that. So when you're doing a modern day adaptation, I think it's really important to not drift too far. I think when that happens, and again, it's not about race or size or gender even, it's about personality. So you could take a Jane Austen character and tell that as a trans story, as that kind of coming of age tale. And that would be great. You could totally do that, as long as the character is still the character that people recognize and you're putting them in a place. I just don't think you want to name somebody. Now, they did make Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, but that just tells you right in the title what it is. But even in that, Jane Austen is listed as the main author of that book because its entire passages from Pride and Prejudice, and they made Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters. Even in that, Lizzie's haughtiness and Darcy's like standoffishness are still there. They just happen to be killing zombies while they're having these battle of wits. So to me, that's just really important. So I just wanted to make sure that I captured the essence. Now, in my book, I made two characters, two men, a couple. But in my reading of Austen's text, they are. It's just, it was 1800 whatever, and that wasn't going to be said. So they had to marry women and do these other things. But like when you see how they're together, I'm like, oh, they're a couple. And anybody I know who's read Mansfield Park, when I say, oh, I made Tommy and Yates a couple, they're like, yeah, I've done that. I've shipped them my whole life. To me, that's keeping their personalities the same, and maybe so their stories are changing. Of course, I'm changing the ages of people. In Mansfield Park, Fanny marries her cousin at the end. I'm not going to do that in 2023. So instead of the mom that takes her in and her real mom being actual sisters, I made them sorority sisters. You do the things that nobody wants to read in 2023 where somebody marries her cousin.
Not in this age, sorry. It might have
That's
been
not going to do it. But that
300
happens
years
in
ago.
half of Austen's books. There's cousin, like in Pride and Prejudice, Darcy is supposed to get married to his first cousin. And that's why his aunt is so mad, because he doesn't want to. Why would he?
Different time frames. Let's just
For
say
sure.
we're grateful that we have moved on.
So that's part of an adaptation too, right? And I think like when we talked about the Lunar Chronicles, she really leans into the joy of those fairy tales and she keeps that magic alive. But because science fiction, fairy tales are just kind of science fiction, magic is science. So she says, I'm not going to have it be magic. I'm just going to have it be science. So she adapts it that way. So I just think there's been people who've done it before me. There will be people who do it after me. And I think the joy of an adaptation is it's a love letter to the thing. I don't think you should ever adapt something that you don't love.
Ooh, can we say that again? Because I think sometimes people forget that and they try to adapt things that they don't like because they think they're going to make it better.
Yeah, you're not. You're going to make it different. You're going to add to the mythology of it. Yeah, you should only adapt the things that you love. It's like when people get super mad, about the casting of whatever in the comic book movies. They're like, that isn't what the person looks like. But that person's also made up.
Very true.
Like if Michael B. Jordan's going to be Superman, yay. Isn't that awesome? He's awesome. I want that. And they're like, well, Superman, he's fictional too. Krypton's not real. Let's calm down, get the best actor for the role. And then if there is part of the social commentary in there, in choosing him to be Superman, great. Let's have that conversation. But that's part of it. You don't do that. You're not adapting Superman because you hate Superman. You're adapting Superman because you love Superman. I love Jane Austen. You never know. In case of emergency, I need some advice. I've got a book handy. I can just grab it and be like, oh, what would Emma do? And then I should not do that. She always has bad advice. When you see Clueless, that is the perfect adaptation of Emma. Emma's heart, Cher's heart is big, but she makes a lot of mistakes because, as she's clueless. But she doesn't know that she is. That is clearly, Amy Heckerling clearly loved the source material because Emma's not a villain. I just think it's so important to me. I love these things.
There's people who do continuations of the Austen books, and they're like,
Claudia Gray has them where the kids of the Austen characters solve mysteries, and other people have them where they're like just still Victorian stately romances where it's like what happens after Darcy and Lizzie get married and what their life is like. If it's a really good book, that's the joy, right? Of what happens next. All of these books kind of end. All of Austen's books you don't see them grow old. So that's fun for people. And so you can live in them. And that's the joy of art, is you get to experience it and have fun with it.
I'm so in love with your take, your passion, and everything you bring into it. Because I think sometimes we forget it should be fun. Sometimes we forget that we're making, I think Liz Gilbert says it really well, we're making brain candy. And sometimes we forget, come on now, like you can do anything in this world and you decided to write a book and you're here to entertain, educate, or motivate. That's it. That's all we can do. Why are we making this so
well
hard?
said. Are you making a shirt that says that? Do you have a shirt that says that? Those things? You should.
I actually think somebody else quoted it. I'm just passing the knowledge along.
Well, I love it. Yeah.
It's only 3 things you can do in a book. You bring all of these together. Like you are entertaining. You're also very much educating in a period in a satire form that it's not confrontation, but it makes you go, what is AR trying to tell me today? So I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, and my narrator is cheeky, and the narrator pops in and talks to the reader a lot. So when you're on the journey, there's somebody with you too. There'll be a few things where people are going off and things. I'm like, we'll just cut them off. That's not important. Don't worry. That person said more words. I think there's one line where I said, we can't recreate everything that Tommy said here because the amount of words that he spoke in that short walk is more words that have already been written in this book. So just know he's talked a lot and let's move forward. So I just do stuff like that. So it's building character, but it's also letting the reader feel like they're in on the joke. Like behind the scene, you're watching the book get written.
We all have a friend like that.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, skip that. Let me translate what they said.
Yeah. You don't need to see that. Let me tell you what happened. Yeah. You don't need to see whatever. That's going to be bad. And I'll tell you what happens. Yeah.
Short version of that. Absolutely. All right, dear. I can chit chat with you all day because I'm having so much fun. But I need to know, where can our listeners find you? Where they can learn more about the books? Where are you located?
Sure. I've got a website that's just my initials, my name, arfarina.com. And so that is the best place to go. And that has access to everything. You can get to my 4 Horsemen page there, whatever local bookseller you want. The audiobook is being finished right now. So that will be coming soon. Very exciting. It's the same reader is going to read the whole 6 books and she's amazing. And so that is coming soon. And you can get access to other places I've been published, access to my podcast where I talk about comic books in the nerdy way. So you can get anything there. So just arfarina.com. It's a gorgeous website designed by my wife. She makes me look good on the internet and in my life, but like presenting in the world. If something is online and it looks good and it's by me, it's really by her.
And her knows she did amazing and we love her for it.
Yeah,
so yes,
absolutely.
This is a team effort.
100%.
So before you leave us, are you ready for the lightning round?
Oh, yes.
Easy peasy. Don't think too hard about this. Let's start. Hot chocolate or apple cider?
Ooh, hot chocolate.
Nice. Pancakes or French toast?
Pancakes.
Okay, you were doing good for a minute, but no problem.
Uh-oh. Sorry.
Skiing or swimming?
Swimming.
Nice.
I've never skied. I grew up in Michigan, but I've never skied.
Don't worry about it. I grew up
Weird.
in New England. Neither did I.
Yeah.
We're in the same boat.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Okay, we're back to good standing. Here's a little different. It's so bizarre. If you could travel to any time period, where would you go?
Oh, wow. I mean, I would be amazing. I would go meet Jane. I mean, how could you not? I mean, it's because obviously this is a fun question. So obviously you could be serious and turn it into a but I would go and I would want to meet her. And I wouldn't want to, disrupt the timeline or stop her from writing the books, but it would just be amazing to see her in action, like peek. Oh, she's over there pretending she's doing her needlework, but really underneath there, she's writing her book longhand because that's what she did. So that's what I would do. I'd want to see it happen.
Ooh, I love it. The questions get written prior to the author just to be fun about it. And some of them I'm like, oh, wow, that's kind of creepy. How did that happen? So it's all good. Every once in a while, I was like, oh, well, that's a different one.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Do you have any closing remarks for us before you leave us?
No, I appreciate you doing this. You make good art. Let's just all make art matters. I love what you're doing, that you're talking to people and why they make their art. And that's so important. So thank you for that. And please give my book a chance. And the most important thing that we can do for each other as writers and for ourselves as readers of writers is go to your local library and request our books in the libraries, my books, DC's books. You've got a favorite book, get it in the library. That's the best way that we can reach everybody.
Ooh, I love it. So to our listeners, you need to check out AR. If you had as much fun as I did, because I know you did, you need to sign up for his newsletter. Make sure you stay connected. Pick up this book. I'm waiting for the audiobook because now I have become an audiobook junkie. So you need to send me a note when it comes out because I need it.
I will.
And to make sure, guys, if you're new or if you are a listener and haven't subscribed, make sure you do so. You don't want to miss a single episode. And we'll be back next week with another amazing author. Bye.